Hi! Welcome to my CD collection video. I want to go over some of the releases that I have right behind me, because I feel like I've been collecting for 4 years and I have a lot to share about some of the albums I have on these very shelves. We're going to do this very simply. I'm going to start from A to B to C to D to E, and I'm going to go all the way down to Z. There's really not a format that I'm really thinking of here. Depends on how many albums I have in the specific letter of the alphabet. Let's just start off here on a high note with Abbath, Abbath. This is the self-titled release from world-famous black metal meme Abbath. When he left Immortal back a few years ago, people were very shocked to find out that he had done so, but not only that, he is forming his own group under his own name and releasing something different. Now, you know, this is obviously a little bit influenced by Immortal. I think it's hard not to see that, but the debut Abbath record I think is still pretty good. I got a lot of enjoyment out of this album when it came out. Songs like To War, Winter Bane, Nebular Raven's Winter, the bonus track, all fantastic songs. I will say the new album is also pretty good, the second one they released, so go check that out if you haven't. But yeah, this is the deluxe book set that I have. It opens like this, and then this part comes out because I fucking broke it. But it came with this pin that I lost the thing for, so I can't actually use it. Yeah, it's one of my prized possessions. And I used to hide weed in it. Alright, moving forward with a band from Athens, Greece. We have Abnormal, Inhumane. And this is their first album here, The Disgusting Cruelty of Homicide. This is the re-release from Swallow Vomit Productions, a very low-key but pretty awesome label. Yeah, this album isn't really too bad. I feel like Abnormal Inhumane kind of drew a lot of inspiration from bands like Pyrexia, Defeated Sanity, and a lot of those influences kind of pop up on this record, so they didn't really have their own identity yet here, but I still would consider this a pretty good run-of-the-mill kind of brutal death metal record. But really, where they started shining was their second album over here, Consuming the Infinity. If I can just get a little close-up on that artwork. Holy fuck, look how cool that is. So yeah, Abnormal Inhumane with Consuming the Infinity is probably one of the most talked about releases back in 2016 when it came out through New Standard Elite. Very big fan of it, super technical type of brutal death metal, lots of blast beats, lots of complex song structures, and the speed and ferocity that this band plays with is like really unmatched. I think it has like this raw brutality to it that I haven't really encountered a lot. So yeah, I'm just a big fan of this album, and I just dropped one of my CDs like a fucking peasant. Next we have an album that I honestly think is largely overhyped, which does not make it bad, but I just don't quite fall into the hype train as the rest. We have Abominable Putridity. We have Abominable Putridity with Anomalies of Artificial Origin. This album comes straight out of the depths of the Soviet land of Russia, and yeah, these sukas really know how to play some slam. I'm a big fan of this release, although when it came out I think people were just jizzing over it way too much. There are things that take me out of it a little bit. I think some of the like choppy breakdown parts are a little off-putting in this release. This is probably like the foundational album for a lot of like modern slam that you hear. They're really doing something special back in 2015. So yeah, I can't say anything bad about it. They do have new music out, Abominable Putridity, so if you want to check that out, you know, it's right here. Next up, some fantastic metal that really served as a great inspiration for me to start venturing into the depths of underground extreme metal music. And of course, I am talking about Aborted. This is their album Necrotic Manifesto. I'm a huge fan of this album. It was really one of the first death metal albums I truly got into, and it made me really love the genre, honestly. This album isn't missing anything. It's technical, but not technical death metal, if that makes sense. It's very, very dense, well composed. The grooves and the song structures are really catchy. It's got a good flow to it. The performances on every instrument, the vocals, everything is top notch. I love it. We have the following release after Necrotic Manifesto, Retrogore, which is still a great album, don't get me wrong. I just personally kind of fucked with Necrotic Manifesto a little bit more, because to me that was just an album that really stuck with me, and I just kind of preferred to you know, rely on that nostalgia factor, but nonetheless, great album. Then they released that Bathos EP, which I thought was really cool, and there's more stuff coming. So yeah, Aborted's just on a fucking schedule, man, and they're delivering some really cool stuff. So yeah. Next up, we have kind of an album that might upset some of you, but hey, this is death metal. What can you do? We have Abuse with Like a Virgin. This album is extremely influential for the Canadian brutal death metal scene, I would say. Not in the same way maybe Cryptopsy was, but in a different kind of sense. These guys are really filthy, and they're, I would say, even obnoxiously heavy. Like, this is stupid heavy. This is so insane and chaotic, but at the same time it has this production that really just crushes you like a tin can under the ocean. I really like the whole vibe with this record. I just love it. It's a good jam. And the song titles are the best part. Satan's Parade, Kill Everything, I Don't Like, Carnage for the Elderly. You know, I have to agree with that one, actually. You know, the elderly are pretty much a plague on this earth. They're spreading the coronavirus. They need to be eradicated. It's about fucking time. It dripped out of her ass. There's something about rape. There's just something about it. What the fuck? You can do a lot with a knife. You know, I think Cannibal Corpse did it a little bit too in your face. They didn't leave you room for interpretation. Fucked with a knife, you already know what's gonna happen. It's like a trailer that reveals too much, you know? It's like, you can't just do that. But Abuse understands that you just have to let the audience think of whatever. You can do a lot of things with a knife. Cut vegetables, stab a bitch. Whatever works. Moving on, we have some black metal that's classified as depressive black metal, and I'm pretty confident to say that it is not. Musically, it is still pretty negative. We have Abysmal Depths with Pain that... Wait, this album's weird. The Pain Shows in Dead Woods. That title always fucks me up. It's really nothing too special. You know, it's kind of just your average sort of black metal, but if you're looking for something that, if you don't mind repetitive black metal, if you want to just get into a certain mood, this could do the trick. I haven't listened to this in a while, I'll be honest, but yeah, it's a decent record. Moving on from that, we have one of my favorite bands of all time, straight out of Detroit, Michigan, right across the border from Windsor, where I live. Acid Witch. This is their album Witchtanic Hallucinations. A fantastic release and very, very creative for its time. I don't think a lot of bands were doing what Acid Witch is doing right now, which you know, they've really kind of created a sound that's unique and original. I don't really know how to describe their music because a lot of people have attempted and the band shat all over them, so I'm kind of scared to try. The best way I could describe it would be doom metal with a lot of like psychedelic elements to it, but not in the sense that you're thinking. They have their own vibe. Their whole vibe it's kind of like a campy horror movie in a way. There's lots of Halloween samples and witches and stuff like that. I mean, you probably guess from the fucking title, Witchtanic. Yeah, it's a lot more raw than their other stuff. I think the production is a bit more murky, and you know, I think that adds to this album's atmosphere a lot more. Some favorite tracks would have to be Swamp Spells, Witch Blood Cult, Witch's Tits is pretty good too. I love me some fucking Witch's Tits, man. Then we have Stoned, which is their sophomore album. Sophomore? Their second album, okay? Stoned is a lot different, beefed up production, cleaner, the riffs are catchier, and I'd say that occult atmosphere is lessened with more of like the campy horror elements, but still it's a fantastic record, and in a lot of ways I actually prefer Stoned just because it's a easier listen. It's really, really catchy as well, so I'm just a big fan of that. We're blowing through these albums like nothing. Next up we have ACDC. I don't really know what I can say about ACDC that hasn't been said already. One of the most influential hard rock bands of all time out of Australia. We got Stiff Upper Lip, a fun album, no doubt, and Who Made Who, which has classics like Who Made Who. Yeah, I don't know, I haven't really looked into like all of AC/DC's discography. The way I see it, whatever I get my hands on doesn't really matter, because, I mean, most of it's the same. The next release we got here is from a band that I discovered through CJAM Radio, and I want to give a little background on this for all you Windsorites itching for some new music, but are broke as shit, like me. CJAM Radio has a little spot in their lounge area where you can pick up CDs. These are discarded releases that they are not going to use, or they're not planning on using anytime soon. But nothing goes in the trash, and you can just grab the CDs. So there's a lot of like cool metal there sometimes, and I discovered this band, Adrenechome? Fuck, how you pronounce that? Adrenechome with Hideous Appetites. I was very surprised when I popped this in, because I never heard of it, to discover that this is some kind of like progressive thrash metal. Yeah, it's a very fun album. I would say, like, I would compare it to Voivod, but goofier, I guess. It's a cool record. It's not that dense either. It's got 7 tracks on it, very easily. It's an easy listening type of thing for a metalhead. But yeah, I think it's pretty good. Adrenechome with Hideous Appetites. This is a band that I've really wanted to talk about for a long ass time. Way back in the Angelus Mortem heydays, I shouted out these guys. It was one of my first label reviews ever. And Conrad was one of the first people to support me, so shout out to Neckbreaker Records from Germany. They have a pretty impressive catalog, not a lot, but what they have is good, quality over quantity. And I have most of their stuff right behind me, so I'm just going to go over them probably in each letter. And moving on with that, we have Aeon of Disease with Veil of Oblivion. This debut album from German, old school, melodic, a little bit death metal band, Aeon of Disease, blew me out of the water. I didn't really know what to think because the cover art didn't look too special. I wasn't expecting, I had no expectations, I just kind of, I didn't really know what to expect, but man, when I popped this in, it was something special. I can't really describe the euphoria I got from this record. Everything about it just clicked with me, It has a really good flow. I think the songs transition into each other very easily. And yeah, the compositions are great. The melodic elements really add to this release. And in traditional German style, this is some nice classic death metal. They also released a follow-up, an EP called Edge of Purgatory from last year. And this is one of those EPs that also caught my attention. I've been following this band ever since Veil of Oblivion, but when this started to pop up around Facebook and stuff, I knew I had to pre-order it for sure because, it's just, how can you not? They also included their demo on here, so yeah, it's just a great EP, great follow-up to the album. So this is Aetheres, yeah, with Dark Wisdom's Domain. Aetheres is an interesting project. I wasn't expecting them to be what they are. You kind of look at this and think, oh, this is some kind of like atmospheric black metal, depressive. No, it's actually black metal combined with like classic heavy metal. Like I wasn't expecting that either. I don't want to spoil too much because I think the obscurity of this whole thing is kind of what makes it so appealing. But it's a fantastic release and a great example of some Polish music. Aepoch. Hell yeah. This is their EP, Apocalypse. Very creative name. These guys blessed us with their presence in Windsor back in the summer, I believe, and it was a fantastic show. Never gonna forget that performance, and the dudes from Aepoch are really cool. I think the vocalist actually made a comeback to Windsor to fill in for a band called Mors Verum because their vocalist couldn't be there. But yeah, really cool dudes. I don't know why I didn't get signed. I'm a fucking idiot. But yeah, this is a fantastic EP. Really cool. It's hard to describe. I guess you could say it's progressive death metal, technical death metal. It's in that niche. But very, very well done. And it has that raw edge to it that I really like. And I think a lot of that music lacks these days. It's a little too clean. But that came after this album. This was their first release, or at least their first album as far as I can tell. And we have Awakening Inception right here. This is a pretty cool album, I would say. It's hard to compare it to the EP because of the length, but yeah, it's still a fantastic release. If you want some really awesome, underrated Canadian metal, I would highly recommend Aepoch. Moving on, we have kind of a release that's hard to describe due to how strange and esoteric it is, and I'm talking about Writhes in the Murk by Aevangelist. If you haven't heard of this group yet, I don't blame you. They do have a very obscure sound. It's not everyone's cup of tea, but they do create some very, very, very interesting music. And each album's a little different, but what I can say is I would think like the same way Behemoth on the Satanist has that wall of sound. Imagine like that, but like more disturbing basically, and more focused in the roots of very primitive sounding death and black metal. But it's still composed in this technical way that gives it this strange quality to it. Like the production is raw and you know, oftentimes, but then you have these insane compositions that they're just disturbing. I don't know how else to describe it. This album specifically has a lot of ambient influence in it as well, so it adds to this enveloping darkness. Now, I'd like to get emotional with you guys, because this next album is one of my favorite albums of all time, and it's been with me through a lot. And I'm talking about Agalloch with Pale Folklore. Yes, Agalloch from the States. You know, just one of the best musical units, I think, to ever exist. It's really sad that they broke up, but they have a lot of fantastic music. The Mantle, the Gray EP, the White EP, just so much fantastic music that I seriously just don't even know how they came up with it. I don't know how music that beautiful could have existed, but it does. Pale Folklore is a little bit of a different story. This album kind of has this atmosphere where you really do feel like you're in some kind of like cold mountain range, especially the first 3 songs, She Painted Fire, Across the Skyline parts 1 through 3, are extremely immersive, and it feels like you're waking up at 6 a.m. in a fucking cave somewhere, and you hear, you feel the wind hitting your face, and it's just, it's such a great winter album when you're just walking around in the winter in the snow, and this is playing in the background, just beautiful. I don't want to spoil everything from it, but it's got a lot of like black metal influence, folk metal influence. There's some post-rock in there. There's a lot of different things coming together at once, and I just can't commend this album any more than I did. Now I want to direct some support towards my boy Brandon Smith. If you guys haven't seen the interview I did with him, I highly recommend you do, because he's a gnarly dude. He owns Midwest Brutality out of the States, and it's not like a crazy it's a pretty low-key sort of operation, but he does have some cool music on there. But this is one of his bands. I have another release that's coming up later, Incestuous Impregnation, but this is his band Agonal Breathing, and there's some writing there because he kindly jizzed on the cover and signed it, so that's really cute. But yeah, in case you wanted to see the cover for real, this is what it actually looks like. That's adorable, eh? So yeah, this is slam, I suppose. It's the kind of slam that, it's really like caveman style shit. Not a lot of, there's basically no technical progression in here. There's really nothing that's flashy at all, or, it's very kind of basic stuff, but I think the beauty in Agonal Breathing is the rudimentary nature of it. It's hard-hitting and to the point, and you get what you get out of it. It's a Michael Bay movie. I mean, it's great. Now we have Ahab. I'm not like a crazy fan of funeral doom metal. It's kind of a genre that's not really my cup of tea usually, but I have to say that this Ahab album, The Call of the Wretched Sea, is fantastic. This is actually the promo of this album, which when I was getting off of Discogs, I got it by accident because it was cheaper. But yeah, this is back when Napalm Records actually had some really cool bands on their roster. RIP. And some of the most awesome like funeral doom metal that I could come across. The atmosphere is impeccable. Moving on from that, we have another C-Jam Radio discovery, but I kind of knew about this band already, Alastor with Slave to the Grave. This is a really cool kind of, I don't know, man. It's like an occult sounding rock and roll album. I really like it. It's got a lot of cool influence from Sabbath and bands like that, but it has its own sort of twist on it. Yeah, I really like this release. It's a great album. Alcest with I can't pronounce it. Le Voyage de l'Âme. I speak Francais like a champion. This album is not the best out of Alcest's catalog. I just saw it in Dr. Disc, a local record store we have here in Windsor, and it was like $3. So I'm like, okay, well, I can't pass on that. It's still a great album, don't get me wrong. I think Alcest is doing that whole post-black metal sound really the best. They're on par with, like, you know, Death Heaven and the likes of those bands. But yeah, like, I love this record, you know, it's great. I got for $3. What the fuck, man? $3? The following is, again, one of those influential bands for me that really inspired my musical taste, and that is Allegaeon. Huge fan of this album here, Elements of the Infinite. It was one of the most inspirational albums to me, and one that really got me started on a lot of, like, that type of music. This was actually, like, even earlier than Aborted. Like, I discovered this very early on YouTube, and ever since I heard the first track, Threshold of Perception, and then just went on Tyrants of the Terrestrial Exodus, Dyson Sphere, all those songs just, it was just like a fucking orgasm in my brain. I loved Allegaeon. I got to see them live, actually, when they released this album, Proponent for Sentience. And this is also a really awesome album. It's a lot more dense than their previous album. You know, Elements of the Infinite was catchier. It had a lot of progressive elements, but it was still much more on the brutal side, I'd say. I think Proponent for Sentience tried to go for something even bigger, even more ambitious. They created this atmosphere that's extremely... it's huge. It's like a monolith of sound, man, and like all the songs have so much layers to them and so much stuff going on. There's even like Spanish guitar and shit. Like, there's just so much cool shit going on with this record. Then we have a classic. I don't have to describe this one too much. Alice in Chains with Dirt. This is one of those albums that I always just really liked. I don't know. I think I'm a pretty big Alice in Chains fan. I just haven't gotten around to collecting their other CDs, unfortunately, but this is always one that stuck with me. I especially love Angry Chair. That song is just... I think the emotion they're trying to get across, they hit it, like, on the fucking nail, like, perfect. And when you're just pissed off, I mean, you know, I could relate to that song right now. The following is a release from a band that I'm a little scared to talk about because I fear for their safety. This is Al-Namrood with, is it Enkar? Yes, Enkar. This is the latest album from this project, and you may have heard of this already, but if you haven't, I'll fill you in. Al-Namrood is a folk black metal band from Saudi Arabia. That's right, Saudi Arabia, where you will get killed for even the mere mention of anything related to heavy metal, to that horrible devil music. You will get fucking slaughtered. These guys took a chance and decided to start creating blasphemous, anti-religious music. They actually have about, I don't even know, I think this is their 6th album? Something like that. This came out through Shaitan Productions, a label based out of Canada as far as I can tell. But yeah, highly recommend you check out this album. The song Xenophobia is especially very catchy. I love the vocal line. Okay, we got Amon Amarth. Holy shit, do I have a lot to say about Amon Amarth. Amon Amarth is one of those bands that I kind of hate right now, but I also love so much, and it's such a weird relationship. I'm just very disappointed with their recent output, especially with Berserker. That album was fucking abysmal and disappointing, formulaic, and boring, and I don't want to get it. But their previous work is definitely something to be admired. We got a few releases here. The Avenger, of course, can't remember that. This is pre-Marvel, so you know, you gotta appreciate that. And it comes in this like 2 CD thing. Isn't that cool? Nice. I got a whole immersive Amon Amarth experience here. Then there's also Twilight of the Thunder God, which I have to say is hands down one of my favorite melodic death metal albums of all time, if not the best one for me. I just, like, personally, I have so much great experiences with this record, working out in the gym, going for walks, or just casual listening. Like, this album is just perfect. Like, I would seriously rate it 10 out of 10. That's just, for me, it's my favorite one. Surtur Rising, also a very, very good follow-up to Twilight. Not quite as good for me, but still a great release. I love this record too. And then we have Deceiver of the Gods. I have this little box thing that I got for 10 bucks at Dr. Disc. Cover art is fantastic, and I can't really say anything else about that. I would say this is kind of when Amon Amarth started doing their formula a little bit too much. I would say that this album comes off as less raw and punishing. It has more of a polish to it. And included with that, we have a little bonus EP with some covers. They cover Motorhead, Priest, ACDC, and Sabbath songs on here. So that's kind of a cool little thing. Amon Amarth aren't shy of doing covers. They did that really cool cover of Aerials by System of a Down, I remember. Finally, we get to some local talent, y'all. Local talent in the form of Among the Rest with their debut album, Black Hearts. This record actually came out not long ago, as far as I know. I forget when that show was, but it was last year. Fantastic concert. If you guys saw any amount of video or photos from that, you would know. But yeah, Black Hearts is their debut. You know, it's kind of funny because I had such a good impression from that concert that the fact that this is in a genre that I really usually don't like at all surprised me. But even musically, this is a good record. The drumming on here is really cool. It's more technical than it needs to be, but not in a bad way. You know what I mean? Like, they could have gotten away with some basic shit, but the drummer actually decided to put in like some flair in there, and it ends up making the album that much better. Yeah, some of the lines are a little bit cringe, but honestly, I think these guys have big hearts. They're really cool dudes in person, and the music kind of has that like that heartwarming boomer quality to it, you know? And I like it a lot. Moving forward with one of the most influential EPs of all time regarding deathcore, or at least the modern technical sort of deathcore movement, we have Applaud the Impaler with Antropophagy. Antropophagy. I didn't say fag. This is an EP from Applaud the Impaler that they made when they were like teenagers, as far as I'm aware. Which is fucking insane, because the amount of just insanity going on in this release is truly mind-blowing. Huge fan of every track on here, especially Jabba the Slut, because of, you know, the opening line. I mean, you can't just not love that. Yeah, just great stuff. I really, really want their full-length album they just came out with recently. I think it was last year they came out with it, towards the beginning of the year, of Apocalypse Incarnate. If you haven't checked that out through Unique Leader, highly recommend that you do. It's really, really good. And moving forth with some more Canadian talent, we have the wonderful Anal Bleeding. Yes, that is their name. Look at it. You can't even tell what the fuck that is. What's even happening on this cover? Yes, this is Anal Bleeding's debut and also their only album they ever released, because they disbanded afterwards. Probably to leave a mark on history for the rest of time. The album is called Two Cocks in the Same Hole. Deep. And it's just a collection of some awesome brutal death metal mixed in with some slam elements. It's really raw. It's got a punishing production that really just kind of suffocates you. And I can overall just say that this is a great album to just pop in. The only thing that takes me out of it is all the fucking porn samples. Like, look, I understand, you know, porno grind, brutal death metal, and they talk about perversion and stuff, and there's a lot of... But it's just off-putting where you're listening to a porn in audio format for like a minute and a half, and then finally you get into the song, and it's just kind of... Yeah, it's a little too much. We have Annotations of an Autopsy, and this is their first album that they came out with. This is their first album before the Throne of Infection, and this is actually a dual situation where if I can manage to make it work, I guess not, because it's broken. Fucking jewel cases, man. But yeah, it's a great release. I think that it has some faults in it. It's really not anything too special. But back in the day, like in 2008, this was like fucking hot shit. Very much in line with a lot of the deathcore that was coming out at the time. But you could tell they were sort of not quite just deathcore. There was more going on than just deathcore. And the response to that tingly, brutal feeling was their second album, The Reign of Darkness. And I just really want you to take in that artwork right there because it is phenomenal. Oh wait, you can, because there's a fucking thing. Yeah, that's not a sticker, by the way. Some retard at Nuclear Blast decided that would be a good idea. I hope this is the only time they ever did this. Holy shit. This is the actual artwork, okay? And it's beautiful. Like, you see this and you're like, how can I not listen to that? But yeah, Annotations of an Autopsy with Reign of Darkness. It's a pretty, like, I don't know how to describe it, because you would want to say like, oh, it's just some generic death metal, but really they do have a way of playing it. It's deathcore guys making a devastating death metal album, like with those deathcore roots in mind. So what you get is a lot of not quite breakdowns, but the song structures are different from what you'd hear in traditional death metal. And yeah, it's just a great album. I mean, I have really nothing bad to say about this. It's fucking amazing. Now we got some more Canadian stoof. This is Antediluvian with very, very obscure sounding. These guys combine black and death metal in a way that I haven't heard a lot of. But I think when this wave started coming out in like 2015, 2014, a lot of bands were kind of creating this murky, like really like evil, putrid kind of style of black and death metal. These guys talk a lot about like prehistory and a lot of different esoteric subjects. So yeah, they're an interesting band. I really hope they release a new album soon. I really don't want to even show this. I'm ashamed to have this album, but For All Kings by Anthrax. This album is the fucking bane of my existence. Anthrax is one of the most cherished bands in the metal sphere, and I despise them. I'm sorry. It's just not a band I like ever. I think they're really fucking corny, and their songs to me aren't really that entertaining. Maybe their older, like, you know, thrash metal, but just their new stuff is like, what the fuck even is this? But hey, at least they have a nice, glossy, pretty digipack to overshine the fact that this music is fucking horrible. But yeah, I picked this up blindly just because it had Anthrax on it, and I was looking for a CD in Walmart, and I just was desperate to get anything. So yeah, I saw this, and I'm like, hey, Anthrax, can't be so bad. Big Four, you know, can't go wrong. But how mistaken I was. This album is so fucking boring and has so little going on that I honestly almost lost my fucking mind. Moving forward with it, we have Antropofagus with Architecture of Lust. This band has really progressed since this album came out back in 2012, but this is just such a fucking awesome, brutal death metal record. It's got such good grooves, man. Fuck, man, like, this album's just great. Comatose Music releases the good shit. Some more incredible brutal death metal in the form of Apoptosis Gutrectomy with Eugenics of Terrestrial Existence. This is one of Indonesia's shining stars in the Siamese death metal organization. If you don't know what that is, it is the collection of, I think, Indonesian and... is it just Indonesian or Japanese as well? But it's in that vein. Yeah, they have some sick bands over there. Really hope you check out some of them. But this is one of those that you should definitely check out. This record is so crushing. The production is what really makes it so devastating. It's really punchy and bombastic. And the thing is that this album is just a total onslaught, right? Like, it just never stops. It keeps pummeling you. Like I did your mom. And that is all I have for this part. If you enjoyed this, please leave a like, comment, share the video, whatever the fuck you want to do. If you guys enjoy this type of content, I can keep making it because, as you can see, I am not running out of any CDs anytime soon. I hope you're doing well with the coronavirus outbreak. Please stay home and be safe, and don't be stupid. Don't go for spring break. Just don't be stupid so we can have more shows, alright? Please, because I'm dying over here. This isn't okay. I'll see you guys on the flip side.